Well, thank you for viewing online or via videotape. City Council budget meeting for September 18th, 2024. And I'll officially start, and I'm going to flip it right over to administrative staff with Jennifer Gregerson.
All right. I just have a few slides to help facilitate, hopefully, your discussion about budget priorities. So I'm not going to read them all. That's my pet peeve, but they're here so we can refer back to them. So these are the priorities that are in the 2024 budget and what staff is working off of as we work on the 2025 budget. But we also are seeking your guidance and input, your thoughts for 2025 development, as well as future years too. So there's responsive and responsible government there, and the sort of a foundation of these priority areas. There's a vision statement that's in the budget document. There's additional information kind of in each of those categories. The first one there, safe community. The big bucket of housing, transportation, and infrastructure. Economic, workforce, and cultural vitality. And then engaged and informed community. So those they live in the budget document. You've seen them before. They have been in use for a few years now, but they aren't just like those first few pages in the nice graphic. They're actually folded into the department budgets as they're developed. So if you've looked at those budget pages, they all include a little graphic relating to whichever category. So Public Works, there's engineering, design and project management activity budget. They've got a link to their primary city priority, the housing, transportation, infrastructure category. That was this sort of description there. They relate accomplishments from the year before, goals and a work plan for the upcoming year related back to that city priority and those goals. Anti-performance measures, workload measures to those same kind of overriding priorities. So this, I have the little grayed out is just an example of what had been done in past budgets. I looked at just what was on the website, and those were sort of the categories that were used in the past. The budget, I think the layout and document worked a little bit differently, so this one really folds in like the current 2024 budget and the plan to develop the 2025 one, fold in those budget priorities throughout in kind of a different way than maybe we did in the past. So I think your thoughts and discussion on how you feel about those existing priorities, they're true, pretty high level. Kind of like, do you not like sidewalks? Of course you like sidewalks. We all like these things. But if there's things that are missing or messages that you've heard from the community, things that we've heard sort of before and after the conversations around the levy ballot measure, it'd be great to hear your thoughts on that. And then I think my reflections from Mike Bailey's presentation and the kind of the work and understanding that you are seeking around the budget is that we're also really interested to hear your thoughts on future years. So what does that budget calendar look like? What does that process look like? When are your voices most effective and useful, and incorporating them into the draft budget that the mayor presents coming up here in another month, and then again, every year. So yeah, I can flip back and we can look deeper at those if you want to read through them, or would welcome your thoughts, feedback, ideas.
Thoughts, feedback?
Sure.
Thank you, Councilmember Vogel.
I like conversation. Okay, I would like to start with the library. And the library being part of our safe community, being I'm not sure if you'd call it a hub, but definitely something that has to do with housing. You wouldn't think it that way, but I can explain. all of number 3, economic, workforce, and cultural vitality, and engaged and informed community. We could probably, as a council, put everything that we love into all of those priorities. But I've been thinking a lot about the library because they've been doing a lot of work already and putting forth some recommendations at their like board meetings and whatnot. And there was one thing that I read that I just wanted to say out loud, and I highlighted it because it kind of encapsulates what I'm trying to say. The ever-increasing needs of our community and a dwindling network of support mean that closing our buildings more will put lives in danger and increase tensions among community members. I'm not trying to be dramatic, but at this point, we are too interwoven into social services to just revoke access without a backup plan for where people are going to go when we are closed. Saturday through Monday is already pretty hectic, and closing it more won't improve things. I would like to add that we have our social workers at the library. We don't have enough housing. There are many community places, there are places in our community that are trying to help the people out there that are addicted or that are having housing instability, and there's either not enough, they're being closed down, they're not going to be opened, like say the AGM Ever Gospel Mission thing that we're voting on tonight, till 2026. The library is a place, and I think even 1 or 2 years ago, the board even came and did a presentation on just how much it benefits a safe community. And so I'm just, to start off our conversation about priorities, that's where I'm going with that, because right now, all the people on the streets that people don't like seeing don't have anywhere to go. And one place that they can go to get services is the library. And one place that they are welcome is the library, if they're not being out of control. So I'm going to start it there. I can just go on talking.
And I appreciate that about you. So I guess my question is, your thought was to bring this up for us to kind of spur a conversation about priorities. Anyone else want to?
Maybe just other context, I have my notes to talk about the upcoming items, but next week's committee meeting, the concept is that we'll be talking about the budget balancing measures, so stuff that departments have that the library folks are aware of too, the reductions in departments to help close the deficit. And so that's the next item that we'll be coming to you with. And I think understanding what matters, even if, and actually honestly, even if you kind of know we have to make tough choices, but it doesn't have to feel good and it doesn't have to be your favorite thing. Like it's useful to talk that out as well and talk about sort of what's most important to you. So.
Councilmember Ryan.
Great, thank you. Quick question, then I can share priorities. So there was a survey that was sent to the community, and survey results came back, and I saw it was in a PowerPoint form, so I was curious if that's something that will be presented to council, or like, so the public could also see it and see the results at some point.
Yeah, we do. We didn't necessarily have a plan to present it, but I can talk with the team about folding that in, or bringing
Sure.
some of that information forward.
Yeah, I think it'd be helpful for the public to know what the pulse of the public is, and I was surprised to see that like cuts to our neighborhood support was the top of the list. That was not something I was expecting, so I think it'd be helpful just for conversations and just making sure public's on the same page with the information that we have, that it could be out there. I think that'd be really helpful.
Yeah.
So thinking about this year's budget, maybe it's just the way I'm framing it in my head, but I'm not necessarily thinking about what we're funding, I'm thinking about what we're cutting. And that's like, the glass half full or half empty, probably, type of way to look at it. But when I think about where the cuts are gonna be and what they're gonna be, I would always lead with equity, and that making sure that any cuts that are made to services don't disproportionately impact already marginalized communities, because that puts an extra strain on those individuals and our society as a whole. And then I also think too about prioritizing a priority of sustainability, that any cuts that happen now aren't more cuts later. So, if we cut out street maintenance, then down the road, no pun intended, that's just gonna cost way more, and it's not something that we can just keep punting. So, so my priority is to add to the list would be equity and sustainability.
Councilmember Bader.
Thanks, Council President. I guess from my experience out there in interacting with our constituents and the public, I'd say I would use an example of the neighborhood meetings I go to, that given a chance to discuss or bring up things that concern them, public safety is always at the top of the list. In fact, most of the neighborhood meetings I know or I go to, if the neighborhood leaders didn't kind of cut or stop the police report, or that part of the meeting that is so typical at most of our neighborhood meetings, I think that would consume the entire meeting, because I think that's emblematic of our constituents' concern about public safety. So at least based on that experience, from what I hear out of neighborhood meetings, other meetings, I think public safety and most deliberately connected with, I think, law enforcement is probably what I hear is a top concern from our constituents.
Councilmember Zarlingo.
Well, I'll echo what Councilmember Bader said. I think we've had the exact same experience in several different neighborhoods and over a number of years. If there isn't a little bit of discipline in the meeting, it will go on a long time that way. The other thing I would say with respect to our community members here and their perception of this process is it didn't begin here. There have been cuts being made in these veins for more than a decade now, as our budgets have not kept pace and staffing has not kept pace with the per capita numbers here in Everett. So that gets to what I think we're all prepared for, and some of this is going to be painful. It's just not going to feel very good, and I don't think there's going to be much of a sense of satisfaction in this. It's going to be really challenging that way. So I did want to say that, because without that perception, I think you'd wonder what we're on about and why this is so painful.
Councilmember Ryan.
Thanks. I was trying to shift my head to the glass half full portion of events, and so I was thinking about how, to go off of what Councilmember Zarlingo was saying, that how important it is to have an engaged and informed community. We had received an email probably a couple weeks ago now that had said something along the lines of like, there's no downside to having an informed community. And from what I've also been hearing at neighborhood meetings, when I've starting up going to the neighborhood meetings again, there's still a number of misconceptions about our budget and our budget deficit and the position that we're in a city, and misunderstandings about how money is spent and where money is spent. So I would like to continue to prioritize an informed community so that so that we can have a more proactive outreach to folks to help them understand how the city helps them, and how we're doing a lot with the little that we do have, and how fiscally responsible we are. So I'd like to continue that as a priority, along with the other three.
Councilmember Bader.
I'll jump in there on another one, and I comment about sustainability. Councilmember Ryan had me thinking too in terms of avoiding cuts or trying to mitigate cuts in areas that ultimately might have long-term consequences that are going to cost the city money later on. So I think of road maintenance as an example, that, if we put it off unduly, ultimately the cost is going to come back and haunt us even more, more dramatically increased costs when we have to deal with it further down the road. And I'm sure there are other examples, whether it's building maintenance or what have you, but painful to prioritize those. But if we don't stay on top of that, it's ultimately going to lead to deeper cuts further down the road when we do have to deal with it. So that'd be a thing to bring up.
Councilmember Vogely.
Let's see, I wanted to bring up a couple specifics again. Municipal arts, I'm a big proponent of the arts, and everybody needs them in their lives, and it's drastic when they're cut. However, we just put $600,000 towards the Chamber of Commerce to get up and started. I think that a lot of the folks that really testified and tried to get Prop 1 to fail are, yeah, okay, call me if you want, are the ones that are benefiting the most from those municipal arts things like Sorticulture, Wintertide, because being in more marginalized groups and those artist space, they're not at Sorticulture. And so I'm thinking that that would probably be a good place to, I wouldn't feel terrible if those funds were diminished, because the Chamber of Commerce that we as a city are going to pay to get started can then utilize the resources that they're going to get from the community at large and the people that are okay. I think that would work. So those two things. I also wanted to say, unless anybody wants to talk about arts, and then I can go to a different thing.
Can I?
Yes.
So, yeah, and I think that's, I think you've hit on something I think I agree with too, Councilmember Vogely, that, having, it's not art, but having done the 4th of July parade, a good example where citizens or constituents stepped up to support something the city didn't fund. And I think the arts might be a good example where we need to call our community to step up and fund that outside of city budget dollars. So, yeah, I chime in to support that sentiment. Thanks.
Great. Councilmember Ryan.
Yeah, I'll echo that, sort of with the arts, but maybe in general of, I have been hearing from the 2 meetings I went to this week about suggestions from the public of having the public step up more for volunteer positions, for local businesses to provide sponsorships for events, and for individuals to band together to do amazing things that the city is no longer able to do. So I would support a call for volunteers to help with stepping up for some of the things that we're maybe not able to fund anymore.
Councilmember Zalingo.
Well, with respect to community efforts, I guess I'd reflect back a little bit to the neighborhood organizations. Our funding of them, I think, overall is pretty thin, but the vast majority of what they do is their own volunteer efforts. And I know with the Pinehurst Beverly Park Neighborhood Association that Councilmember Ryan and I both are part of, that's hosted by the Boys and Girls Club. Neighbor activities. So I would like to give credit to those who've been putting that effort in. I hope we can expand that. And in a way, that sort of investment in other people's efforts to leverage those is what we're trying to do, even with the Chamber of Commerce. I'll try to be cognizant of that as we go through these things. I'd like our community members to step up even more. But I also recognize that sometimes there's real leverage in getting that volunteer effort going or keeping it going.
Councilmember Ryan.
One more thing, I will share too, a reminder that the city does have the mandated 1% for the arts program and also the LTAC dollars. So there is still guaranteed revenue for the arts. And I think it's maybe a discussion about if that's enough or if there's other avenues that should still be funded as well.
Thank you. Just a note here, do we have more on the agenda that the administration would like to cover? I think so. Okay. I would like to remind, maybe someone might be watching this, hopefully a lot of people watch these meetings. This board has decided that the level of service the city has been providing needs to be maintained. I mean, I just want to keep reminding those out in the public. So this group here made a decision to make a big ask, and that was to maintain our current services that we were providing. What we put before the voters was not to add additional items, not many. Consider a few new things like a pool. So when we talk about some of the things we're not going to fund, really that's what it comes down to. This board, we want to fund everything that we currently provide. So this task really is about not funding, not necessarily cutting, because none of us didn't make much cuts. Obviously, if there's some efficiencies, some improvements that we're willing, I think all of us are willing to look at those and cut those. But really just, this is a matter of prioritizing what we're going to fund. I also hear this, and this has been a constant theme, about a public that's not provided enough information or hasn't spent the time to read the documentation. I'm just going to defend this group. We have had a series of multiple meetings before and after this initiative. So, and then I think the mayor's staff has done a wonderful job providing all the information on the website. As a council, we're not an advertising agency. We're not here to try to convince our voters to vote for something. We're here to provide the information, make the decisions based on as much solid information as we can find. Yes, we do want to determine the level of service. And I think we've done that. And now that level is not meeting our first initiative. So as far as not funding, it's a very difficult task, because I see this whole list and I don't see anything on there that I don't want to fund and I think and I've already made that decision as a representative of the city that not funding what we're doing right now is not a good thing. But unfortunately, for whatever reason, that choice isn't before us. So the priority is obviously a public safety, and that is a broad swath when you say that word. And I've heard that for a long time. Is it fire, EMS, police, law enforcement? Is it services that keep our streets safe, like library and other shelters? It's a combination of those things. And so it's difficult. I guess my priority for me with public safety is a balance. And where that balance is, we were getting closer, I think, as a city. I think we were maintaining the funding for our police staff. We were improving our services for those in need to keep them off the streets. So I guess from my point of view is somewhere we got at this board, we got to find out where that balance is. So I guess I'll just leave it at that. Yes, Councilor Zingle, yeah.
Relevant to those thoughts, I attended one of the public outreach sessions as well, and got some very good information, although one of the things that we got as feedback was that for the most part, we weren't proposing anything new. We were asking for an increase in property taxes without proposing new services. Now, I was mindful of the fact that compared to other communities, our property tax revenues per property are about a third lower. So we are collecting less, and the choice in Measure 1 was a choice by our community members, our voters, to what they want us to do. And so that those things kind of inevitably have to be rationalized somehow. And I'm confident that this body and administration will do the best possible job that way. But I also think that that's not going to be, it's not going to be anything new, and it's not going to be a very appetizing kind of thing. But, I'll certainly promise, as I think you will, that we'll do the best we possibly can with limited resources.
Councilmember Vogely.
So our property taxes are capped at 1%, as everybody knows, and, well, most people, if you've been listening. I was reading the Snohomish County Jail interlocal agreement for housing inmates, and I just want to say that every year, first of the year or September, I'll look at it, it goes up 3%. So across the board, whether it's booking fee, inmate fee, video conference calls, it goes up 3%. And we can only, and as we all know, later on this evening, we'll be talking more about that amendment to add another couple mil to our jail budget. That's not a direct number, so don't quote me. But I think that that is a lengthy conversation that could be had, and I don't need to go into it right now because I don't have all of my facts lined up in a row. However, that is a fact, and it's 3% every year. And it's a lot of money, as we are finding by budget amendments. I would like to continue to be very informed about how many inmates, why. I have that information from 2017 to 2023. But I would like 2024's, the rest of 2023's numbers and what we have in 2024, just to see where we are in number of inmates and number of days housed. So, yeah, I think I want that. Yeah, it's just amazing doing the math and seeing just how much it goes up every year. Okay, I will leave it open to Jill or that kind of discussion before I move on.
Councilmember Bader.
Thanks, Council President. I think some of those other things we'll probably see this next week when we get more towards specifics, but things that the public might see as somewhat invisible, but kind of fall in line with maintenance in some ways, whether it's IT things we have to continue to keep up with because we have to make sure we have properly provided and safe, secure IT. Similarly, responding to public records requests that continue to expand, I think, that we don't have a choice about whether to keep up with those things. So I think what will be helpful in the next couple of weeks will be maybe pointing out to us who don't spend our 40, 60 hours a week running the city day in and day out, what are those things that really are must fund, because if we don't, we're either going to put ourselves in legal jeopardy or almost the same as legal jeopardy in terms of jeopardy with like an insurance carrier who would either increase our rates or maybe not even cover us if we didn't have adequate IT security, for instance. So I'd be grateful for, as you go through the next couple of weeks to point out those things that really are must fund, even if they aren't legally must fund. So.
Councilmember Zarlingo.
Yeah, on that very subject, the airport, which suffered in not having enough IT security, suffered a ransomware attack. They are not yet fully online. It's weeks. The costs and this is one of those things that several council members have talked about in terms of longer-term thoughts to be careful of proper funding in some of those areas because shortfalls there or inattention can cost way, way more. And I think actually the airport is now dealing with a data breach and publishing of that data on the dark web, and now there will be additional costs that way and notifications. So I think we're all going to be very mindful of that. And then on the subject of public safety, I'll have a little more to say during the council meeting tonight, but the Regional Law and Justice Council is working on some of that, especially with respect to mandates from the state on some of these things that our city attorney has described to us recently that will be costly and may impact reasonable administration of justice and accountability. And so there are some possibilities there that will help direct some of our efforts for legislative relief and maybe some funding for some of what otherwise are unfunded mandates coming up in the upcoming legislative session.
Yeah. I'd just like to add, one thing I think is really important as we go through this process, and going to really rely on administration, and that is a list of services that we're not funding. I think that's really important, that for the public to know that this was the before and this is the after.
I might just add that Councilmember Vogel mentioned the jail contract increases, and that's a great example of many things that have, that's the whole point of why the 1% property tax cap is so difficult. So the people of the city, so the wages and benefits, they are not tied to a 1% limit. But also all of these, there's a lot of external factors that aren't tied to that. So I know the jail contract links back to their staffing. They're facing those same increases there. That's part of it. But insurance rates, a lot of other external partnerships, things like that. That's a good example of many, many similar situations that make it tough to do the same thing with the weight on the revenue side, so.
Councilmember Vogel.
To continue, because I forgot when I was first, I'm wondering, so I didn't see the amendment, this interlocal agreement ended December 31st, but I'm sure there's been an amendment, but I couldn't find it. And Chief DeRoos's name is on it, and I know that he's only recently become the chief. So, but that's not my point. The point is, if we are not in contract right now and we're just paying as we go, can there be a discussion with the county? I know when COVID hit, and that was the first of many budget atrocities, they were gonna raise rates a lot, and then they decided, okay, we'll be cool, and we'll just do half now and half later. I know we're now at 100% of whatever that was, plus the 3%, but I don't believe that it's council's purview to have that conversation, but maybe they might be interested in listening and negotiating something. It's a possibility. So I just wanted to put that out there for the county to hear, and you all. Yeah, okay.
Okay, well, I will just put Councilmember Fossey on the spot. Is there anything you would like to add and give you the opportunity? We're good if you're not, but, okay. With this time, unless there's some more further discussion, I think we'll just adjourn our budget committee. Okay, thank you.